Alright, so, part 2. Got a little sidetracked because I'm a lovesick fool. The point was, it's all connected. The point was, the time I drew blood from a corrections officer. Now, to get to that, gotta get back to Freddy. Yeah. Alright, so, long story short, I had graduated, but was still, a lot of the people who were living at that co-ed fraternity, Cleo, the sex drug cult, former Delta Kappa Epsilon, It's kind of like a hippie Skull and Bones. Imagine the age of Aquarius, but like, I don't know, like 100 Days of Saddam. But, so, I had spoken about Cleo before. I'm not going to drag everything up before. Long story short, it was a frat in 1969, so it went co-ed, it was hippy-dippy, but it always had an ebb and pull, culturally. Now, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but my senior English thesis was on the novel Inherent Vice, which again takes place in around 1970, that same era. Now, I've spoken to older heads from previous generations of the class, both of that organization and other people at Trinity, and they confirmed what I know based on historic assumptions, that when speed and heroin really became hip, it really sidetracked all the progressive movements, and then the hippies just had to fucking be butting heads with these fucking, no offense, not to use dehumanizing terms, but these junkies and these fucking speed freaks and these fucking wackadoos, it's constantly self-sabotaging themselves, constantly talking over themselves, just overly sexual, overly violent, and full of good ideas at first. You can get away with it if you're like maybe a very good musician or artist, but if you want to sustain like organizational growth and management, which requires like often a very steady hand, you can't do that when you have the DTs because you're an alcoholic or you're fucking old. So God bless Cleo. And like I've told you before, I'm not holier than thou, but I had the constitution where I could fucking handle that shit. So at that time, not only am I a couple years older in a seat, but just a little wiser. And, again, my family, they have a history of violence and a history of fucking silence, alright? So I know what to look for. I'm never always the most perceptive person in a room, but if it's a room full of addicts and drug users, I am. I know entirely what's going on. Paranoia strikes deep because, again, to quote the great Thomas Pynchon, the writer of the novel Inherent Vice, in his earlier novel, Gravity's Rainbow, one of the parables for paranoids. Paranoids aren't paranoids because they're paranoid, but because they keep deliberately fucking idiots getting themselves into paranoid situations. So that's me in a nutshell. From high school, I always would be at the biggest group of fucking misfits, fucking Kool-Aid acid test shit. I just, was on my weird, I was on my wavelength. I had a lot of good friends, a lot of near and dear friends at Cleo. From my year, from the older years, and from the younger years. So the class of 13, aside from the girl who I knew, who I dated, Shasta Faye, there were other people there. Florida Man, and also some other people I'm not going to name, who were really close to me. But, like I've said before, in many ways, I was a Pied Piper, leading them into an environment where they were in over their heads. Florida Man, he had a nickname known as Kingpin. That was his dealer name. That was his little shadow persona. I gave him that. He was thinking about selling weed. And he didn't want to. And I remember that kid as a freshman. He was a fucking mess, man. And at that point, I knew better. I could have helped him, maybe. But nah, man. Rich dude, some weed. Little demon in my head was like, hey, man, free shit for you, Or I don't know. Maybe genuine, trying to empower my genuine friendship. But it's funny. The name of the Father, say my name, Heisenberg, you're goddamn right. Shit, I was Jesse Pinkman to his Walter White one time for Halloween. Me and this dude were so close friends that we fucking had multiple Halloweens where we had fucking matching costumes. It was a bad romance, but it was a good friendship while it lasted. But the nature of cults and Iagos in the midst, and our own demons and frailties, plus fucking nature of the Irish. But I said, hey man, you be a real kingpin. I don't know, it'd be dealing coke and fucking dope. But he was the president. By the time I was around there, he was the president. Alright. The girl I loved, she kind of detached. And again, because the house had always had an ebb and flow of attention, it was right on the midst of a very dark age because the membership was low. So they wanted to get people to join at all costs. So we had, we were open enough that we would sometimes take people who weren't Trinity students. Sometimes these people would be because they wouldn't be fucking Trinity stock or fucking bullshit fucking blah. They'd offer me great. Sometimes it'd be a lot of weirdness and awkwardness. So, because again, you have a small class of, what was I? I had just graduated and again I was fucking lovesick. What was I gonna fucking, man, maybe I did see it coming, but I was too busy in my own head, my own world, trying to suppress the memory and the perceptiveness. Like I said before, if I'm the most perceptive person in the room for the addicts, I definitely did see it fucking coming, but I guess I didn't care enough to stop it because I had a couple people join that were clearly deep into heroin addiction. Poor Freddie being one of them. And we went through our little cultish practices, and I remember at one point we were all chanting because he was running around naked, one of us, one of us. And I played Freddie's Dead as a joke, and even me, I'm not. And I realized that it's because of my inherent trauma of being raised by heroin addicts and more or less being raised to fiend myself that perhaps that was why I had object blindness. But it became clear that it wasn't just Freddie, but many other people in that place, including this one guy. I swear he felt like he was the goddamn fucking devil himself, this dude Rob, who preyed on my friend Kingpin. Let's call him Kingpin for now, for this part. And I swear Rob must have been the devil himself, but like some shit was going on. So it segged from them graduating, these weird people joining and living in the house to a summer. So I was gonna crash and probably squat there anyway just for the party. But then knowing, seeing, feeling darkness about to rise, felt like I was obligated to stay there just to help expose it and clean house before the students came back the next semester to maybe give them a better chance. Because I had been there so long, I had seen patterns and I knew in myself, And I'd played the villain, of course. But maybe that was time for me to redeem myself. But at the end of the day, it was also because of that girl. It's because of Shasta. Even though she wasn't quite around, I felt like, she knew all the good I did. She hadn't even fucking, I was so arrogant, couldn't even see the fucking real trouble she was struggling with. If I really wanted to help her, I wouldn't have done the dealing with those fucking bozos, I can tell you that much. But I was a fucking man on a mission, fucking on fire, Somehow the most responsible person in there, even though, again, if they'd offer me blow, I'd do some blow, even though I knew blow was the low in the rock bottom. But like too many fucking grifters and lifters started going in there. And long story short, we had interventions. We confronted Freddie. Trying to help him, And that was the thing. It wasn't just me, but I was grateful to, and I wish I could name their names and give them the credit right now, but I can't because they don't want to implicate them in this fucking goddamn RICO case. There are like 3 or 4 or 5 buddies who were also members of the fucking cult who were in there, but who knew. good people, real good people, a rainbow coalition of good, decent people. Some of my best friends to this day. 2 of which are now married. 1 has kids. People who are doing real good. Trust me, people who I saw doing in the depths, who are with me in the trenches doing some fucked up shit, whose lives could have taken a turn. All ours could have. By the grace, we didn't fucking become Freddy. You know, by the grace. Because, I would still see Freddy on the streets, on the highway, get collected money. Those people are part of crews. They're part of crews. People drive around, they pick them up, they consolidate the money, but it's like exploitation, because they can make a lot of money. But then they usually get a ringleader who fucking takes most of it and just gives them fucking dope to keep them fucking satisfied, and it's very sad. It's a very depraved underground market of drug addiction, which is why I think Freddy was so fucking almost fucking must have been happy as shit to stumble into fucking Trinity, to that gold mine. Wasn't I? Wasn't that me? And what I was there, judging him, calling him a desperate, depraved junkie, being like, oh guys, Freddy's stealing from you. The fuck would I do when I'd be blackout? But take fucking shit from my very own friends. The klepto in me, which I talked about, Rob was the devil though. And then we exposed him as well. In a very, I won't get into all those beats, but we excised him from the place as well. And there were, oh my god, there was a couple there erupted in violence one night because of their substance abuse. And again, reminds me of my parents now in hindsight, where I guess he had lifted her off the ground and was choking her. Blood was dripping from her throat. I found a sketchbook she left behind. Oh, the cries for help. So plain, so obvious. I remember one time we had a BB gun and she was during the summer and she was practicing shooting cans with a BB gun. I could see in her face just this joy. I knew who she was thinking about shooting. Last I checked, they're still together. I think we accidentally pseudo-sex trafficked. She wasn't underage. She said she was 18 or 19, but she could have been 17 or 16 for all we knew. This random fucking girl who ends up there shacking up with a dude who wasn't a fucking. And then the saddest moment of that whole experience. And the next part, don't worry, I'll get to attacking the CEO. I don't want there to be too much blood spilled in one part. But there was one point going into the summer, before the summer, near the end of the semester, 2013, early 2013, when Freddie had been a member and the people were there and it was a weird environment. The guy who helped accidentally traffic that girl I just mentioned had a bunch of cats. He could barely take care of himself, so of course he couldn't take care of the cats. God bless him, he's a good dude. He's a real good dude. I talked to him and I figured out why he was the way he was. And he was a kindred spirit as well. But long story short, something happened and one of the kittens died, got, squished or whatever, I don't know. And so Freddie, probably again, was fucked up on dope and is a fucking mirror of his own death. And drug addicts actually are really kind to animals and it really hurts them. They see in animals themselves, this sort of helpless creatures. Trust me. And they'll want to bury animals. It's a interesting thing. It's not just psychological, but sort of psychospiritual. But in that, it's the darkness, because Freddy's going around doing a party where students are there, carrying around this dead cat. That's when we know, oh shit, Freddy's dead. Ooh. So, it makes sense dealing with all of that. That all the mirrors why I broke. By the grace.